Throughout the history of action-adventure entertainment, famous characters often have a signature weapon.
Therefore, elect from axe or blade.
I choose the axe.
Going all the way back to ancient mythology, Achilles had his invincible armor, King Arthur had Excalibur, Thor had the hammer Mjolnir. It's a tradition that has never abated. Even today, we remember many heroes by their special weapons. Robin Hood is associated with the longbow. Zorro is the sword-flashing swashbuckler. Luke Skywalker carries the lightsaber. Wonder Woman has her lasso. Indiana Jones is best known for the bullwhip.
What bring you good luck?
I guess this.
Video games did no differently. Link carries the Master Sword, Cloud wields the Buster Sword, and Mega Man has his Mega Buster. I guess for a lot of video game characters, bustin' makes them feel good. Mario liked to dress up in animal pajamas, but let's face it, Mario's always been a weird dude. The point is, a lot of fictional characters are known almost as well by their weapon as their name. So when you hear the name Tomb Raider or Lara Croft, even if you've never played any of those games, most people know she's the chick with the dual pistols. However, unlike the Lone Ranger's silver Colt 45 revolvers, Lara's pistols didn't spring into existence as instantly iconic. Behind the scenes at Core Design, the studio that created Tomb Raider, Lara's pistol brace would go through a few iterations and revisions before its final form. Because of the primitive 3D graphics in the late 1990s, the original in-game pistols in Tomb Raider are basically silver rectangles. Meanwhile, the promotional renders of Lara have a more detailed look at the semi-autos she carries, but even those images are still a bit dicey at times. Just look at the cover art for Tomb Raider 2. I'm still not sure after 28 years what's going on with that pistol sitting strangely backward in her holster. These guns were originally identified by the game's designers as a pair of Browning high powers, despite them looking pretty small in Lara's mitts. This is an interesting choice given that Lara is seen as a successor to Indiana Jones, and Harrison Ford's character did use the Browning high power briefly in 2 scenes in the original Raiders of the Lost Ark as his backup sidearm.
Whiskey?
In every game, Lara would find other more powerful weapons to dual wield, but her signature weapons were always her pair of basic pistols, which you could always fall back on with their unlimited ammo if you ran out of resources with your found weapons. Lara would be depicted with the Browning high powers through the first 3 games. However, with 1998's Tomb Raider 3, the player had the option of using a single found pistol, a Desert Eagle. This would be a harbinger of things to come, sort of. I've often wondered if part of this shift to begin using Desert Eagles in promotional images was brought about by the 1996 film Barbed Wire, a highly anticipated action film that flopped, but nonetheless became a kitsch icon in its own right. The many images of Pamela Anderson firing 2 Desert Eagles and holding one of them in promo images was everywhere. Is it possible the people at Core Design didn't want Lara showed up by other action heroines at the time? With 1999's Tomb Raider: The Last Revelation, the 4th game in the series, Lara was suddenly depicted in promotional images with a pair of those massive Desert Eagles. However, in the game itself, Lara never uses Desert Eagles. This presence of the Desert Eagles as her weapon of choice in promotional imagery would continue with Tomb Raider Chronicles the next year, even though in the game, Lara's use of the Desert Eagle was identical to Tomb Raider 3, limited to a single weapon as a found item. So while the most prominent images of Lara were getting an upgrade to her armory, the games themselves were scattershot with this in practice. And while Lara had a distinct method of self-defense, she still had no trademark weapons that helped define her character. With the release of Tomb Raider Chronicles in 2000, the game franchise was now scheduled to make the transition to the next generation of gaming consoles. Core Design was hard at work on Tomb Raider: The Angel of Darkness, and this is where the timeline for the story of Lara's guns gets hazy. At the time, Core Design was partnering with Paramount Pictures, the distributing studio behind Indiana Jones, for a huge summer blockbuster release of Lara Croft: Tomb Raider starring Angelina Jolie in the title role, and Core Design evidently had an agreement with Paramount for a certain amount of brand synergy, as they changed the logo of the franchise to reflect the Jolie film logo, and updated some of the aesthetics of Lara, like her sunglasses and general color scheme, to be more in line with how Jolie's version version of Lara would be presented. While the Angel of Darkness was intended for release sometime in November 2002, it would have been in active development for many months by the time Lara Croft Tomb Raider hit theaters in the summer of 2001. This is where the journey of Lara's sidearms gets foggy, because Jolie would be seen in the film with a pair of H&K USP Match pistols, officially making it the first time Lara Croft would carry these weapons. However, it's not clear if these were originally chosen by Core Design for their next-generation Angel of Darkness game, as they appear in all of the promotional art and renders of Lara for the game's advertising, or if they were selected by the producers of the film and then Core Design adopted them in a further gesture of brand synergy with the new film. I tend to think it's the latter. Even though the concept art would have already been done for the game, it hadn't been seen by the public, and the art itself is very basic where the guns are concerned, often looking at most like another pair of Desert Eagles in one concept sketch for the PS2 game cover. Ultimately, Lara would be seen with the dual USPs in artwork, but never wielded two at once in the final game. Add to that a story that has surfaced that indicates the film's production team did attempt to use the Desert Eagles, which would make sense given their prominent use in the promotional imagery from the recent games at the height of Lara's popularity. However, it was quickly realized the Desert Eagles would not work well for the intended action scenes. Maybe they watched Barbed Wire and thought better of it, so the production team went looking for another option and found the HK USP Match to be the perfect, match. Oddly enough, though, while Jolie was never photographed with the Desert Eagles during her firearm training, she was captured training with Lara's original weapon, the Browning High Power. The HK USP Match is a competition version of the USP V1 semi-auto, with added modifications to assist performance shooters, most notably the prominent and distinctive barrel weight, which gives the pistol its imposing profile. Jolie used 9mm versions of the USP Match with the stainless slide option. After its appearance in Lara Croft Tomb Raider, the pistols would appear prominently in Angel of Darkness materials when it was finally released after several delays in June 2003. 1 month later, Jolie's sequel to the original film, titled Lara Croft Tomb Raider: The Cradle of Life, would again have the character pack dual HK USP Match pistols, this time in a custom platinum color. The prominence of the pistols in the original film, which while critically lambasted was a financial success, prompted other films to use them, most famously Wesley Snipes in both Blade sequels and Kate Beckinsale's Underworld, which released the same year as Jolie's Tomb Raider sequel. Even James Bond himself, Timothy Dalton, comically uses the HK USP Match at the climax of Hot Fuzz.
Stay back! Or the ginger nut gets it!
Meanwhile, in the Tomb Raider game series, the USP Match was instantly adopted as Lara's signature weapon, appearing as her trademark sidearm in Tomb Raider Legend, Tomb Raider Underworld, Lara Croft and the Guardian of Light, Lara Croft and the Temple of Osiris, and while not consistently, also appeared occasionally in her hands in the popular comics from Top Cow at the time. Notably, the game developers did not give Lara the HK USPs in Tomb Raider Anniversary, possibly wanting to give that game the feel of being earlier in Lara's adventures, as it was a reimagined version of the original 1996 game. However, they didn't return her to Browning High Powers. Instead, they gave her silver 1911s. When the entire series was rebooted in 2013, the 3 games in that trilogy never allowed the player to have Lara use 2 pistols at the same time, which was really disappointing. Despite this, the sequels, Rise of the Tomb Raider and Shadow of the Tomb Raider, do allow you to modify and upgrade a variety of pistols to the extent that you can acquire weapons that are obvious nods to the HK USP Match. And in the very last shot of the 2018 Tomb Raider film with Alicia Vikander, despite it being a film based on the 2013 game, the movie gives a huge nod to Lara's classic past, with Vikander holding up the pair of USP Match pistols.
I'll take 2.
And they appear to be the very same ones used by Angelina Jolie in the first Tomb Raider film, as you can see the custom left-hand slide release levers that were added to Jolie's. The USP Match has become famously associated with Lara Croft and Tomb Raider thanks to the Jolie film.
Was it programmed to stop before it took my head off?
And almost 2 decades worth of games and media that continued to feature it. in addition to many other movies, TV series, and video games in the 2000s that wanted to get in on the USP Match fascination. As a result, the HK USP Match is Lara Croft's signature weapon at this point. A strange fate for a pistol that was something of a failure for HK to the extent it was discontinued in 1999, a year before Jolie's first Tomb Raider movie would begin filming. Buyers preferred the HK Expert that was more versatile, while the Match was so engineered for competition shooting, people passed on it at the time. That meant there weren't as many to go around when the pistol's notoriety exploded in the 2000s, and the prices quickly skyrocketed. So flash forward to the 2020s and the prices are outrageous. However, given my obsession with adventure heroes and the relic raider genre, I didn't want to completely give up on having a pair of them for my own. You can always get airsoft versions of the pistols, but these are just plastic props in reality, with a lot of missing details and many compromises. They're great for women who want to make a costume as Lara Croft, but not really satisfying for someone who likes the found item's functionality. As an analog, you can buy bullwhips that are simply cosmetically accurate props to hang on your belt as a costume piece, but a functional bullwhip and knowing how to effectively use it is far more appealing to me. However, I acknowledge firearms are a different level of challenge altogether when it comes to getting something from a movie that simply isn't around anymore or never existed to begin with. Going back to the Indiana Jones example, Ford carried a Smith & Wesson M1917 in Raiders of the Lost Ark. You can find those pretty regularly with a little determination. However, for Raiders, they cut the barrel from 5.5 inches to 4 inches in length, so you'd have to go to expensive and risky lengths to modify any revolver you found to achieve the Raiders revolver. Meanwhile, you can get a Model 22 that is the correct barrel length, but it revises the barrel lug around the ejector rod and deletes the lanyard swivel from the grip. Incidentally, this is the exact revolver used by Honor Blackman in the famous scene from Goldfinger.
That's very sensible.
But while in the family of the M1917, is itself not the custom gun made for Raiders of the Lost Ark. In Last Crusade, Ford carries the Webley WG Army revolver. Well, you can get its later cousin, the famous Webley Mark VI, pretty easily, but it doesn't have the same grip shape. However, finding a WG is a tall order. With the Tomb Raider USP Match pistols, the ability to get them at all is tough enough due to rarity and insane prices. The ability to get them in 9mm is even tougher, as most of the examples in the United States are the .45 caliber variation that has wholly different dimensions from the 9mm version. However, there was some hope here. Because the USP Match pistols were modified USP V1s, and the USP V1 is still manufactured, I set about trying to determine what it would take to acquire a set of new V1s and convert them to USP matches. I found new USPs out of California with sequential serial numbers for a good price, as they came with the limited, less desirable 10-round mags, which I would be tossing anyway, because one of the major features of the Tomb Raider versions are the addition of the HK jet funnel mags, which make it faster to reload the pistols, an essential need for Lara. Then I sourced the authentic HK parts. The USP Match has a different trigger hammer assembly, different sights, ambidextrous safety lever, the jet funnel mag wells, a longer barrel, and the distinctive barrel weight. The other challenge was going to be the stainless color of the slides. Not only did HK discontinue the USP Match in 1999, they discontinued the stainless slides for the USPs sometime after that. So even with the guns in hand and a pile of parts, there would still be some legwork. I was able to source all HK original parts for the triggers and hammers, the safety levers, the jet funnels, and the sights. I decided on going with the very well-known barrel replicator Jarvis to get the longer barrels. Original barrel weights also wouldn't be possible, and so I went with Match Weight, an equally well-regarded third-party replicator of the HK USP Match barrel weights, and I chose their functional grade option over the less expensive aesthetic version. I wanted something that was as close to the USP Match as possible in both form and function. It's also worth noting that for the purposes of the Tomb Raider recreations, the images of Jolie erased the white-etched Match livery on the barrel weights. Nor were they intended to be seen in the movie because the armorer blacked out the logo engravings. You do see them occasionally when the lighting hits them the right way, but you're not supposed to. And given that you don't see engravings at all on the pistols in the mainline video games, which is the prime continuity for Lara Croft, in-universe, both in the movie's intentions and in the games themselves, Lara's pistols have no logos on them, which would give these custom conversions a little more specificity to Tomb Raider. First, the pistols had to be professionally disassembled. The slides were prepped and sent to a service in Florida, where they were stripped and replated in matte chrome, which was both the closest replication of the stainless finish of the originals and the most durable option in the long term. I also chose matte chrome because, like with the engravings on the barrel weights, in the mainline games, which is the prime Tomb Raider canon, Lara's pistols give off more of a matte chrome impression than a brushed or polished. The triggers, hammers, and safety switches were swapped out, and the jet funnels were installed. With the return of the slides, the top of the pistols were reassembled, and then the new sights were installed. The longer barrel was put into place, with the barrel weight attachment being the last step in the process. However, I omitted one feature of the Tomb Raider USPs. I made the conscious decision not to attempt fabrication of the custom left-handed slide release levers, as that would require actual modification of the pistols, and I didn't feel comfortable doing that since these are effectively showpieces anyway, and the added levers are pretty ugly if we're being honest. After testing them at the range and verifying they were not only working properly but were accurately sighted, I decided it wouldn't be right to leave them separated without a nice display case. A custom storage case was designed for them, with slots for 4 additional magazines, reflecting the number of mags Lara was able to carry on her gun belt in the film. The Tomb Raider and HK logos were added to the underside of the case lid as well as a final touch. These pistols will be displayed alongside an actual DMM Rebel ice axe, Lara's more recent addition to her signature arsenal. And that brings my collection of my favorite adventure heroes' weapons of choice to a long-awaited conclusion. Robin Hood's longbow, Luke Skywalker's lightsaber, Indiana Jones' bullwhip, Captain America's shield, Sho Kosugi's ninjato, and Lara Croft's now famous pair of HK USP Match pistols. The USPs are the definitive Tomb Raider guns for me, to the extent I photoshopped them into her hands on the 25th anniversary image before printing it as a full-size poster for my studio entryway. I've always believed anything worth doing is worth doing right, and I'm really happy to finally have these pistols in my collection, knowing that they were converted the right way without any shortcuts.